happening as usual, but I'm liking the what's starting to happen in the old structure. It's starting to crumble, and it's interesting. I saw where what was it, 36 or 37 members of British Parliament were resigning. Like, and then there was some stuff coming out about the jab
Yeah.
that's getting some traction in the mainstream. That's talking about legally that if there was fraud, that all contractual agreements are null and void, to include immunity. Have you seen that one?
I was aware of that, which is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, really is. We got 22 people in the house. We can start. Let's see how long we in. A minute. Let's give it another 30 seconds. Let me make a couple of quick announcements before we welcome Mary back. We're having I'm in Sedona. Everybody knows it. I hope they do by now because I've done enough videos. We're having a Soulogy dance next Thursday on the 14th. It's 8 o'clock Sedona time, 8 to 10. And so it'll be 11 to 1 a.m. East Coast. Be afternoon New Zealand, Australia. It's a free live stream. It's a really me and my two partners. We've been doing some sessions, and we're going to have an interactive performance where the audience participates vocally as well as dancing. It's all about the I Am Soul, so be looking out for that. You're welcome to come online. It's free, and you can watch the replay. Anyway, let's welcome Mary Rodwell back to the Soulogy community. It's always a pleasure talking to you. So much always happens between the last time we talked. It hasn't been that long, but God, we were talking about these things coming up, out of the earth, be it literally or not, but so many things happening. So, yeah, welcome back, Mary. Thank you for coming on.
Todd, it's always a pleasure. And as you say, we're in interesting times now. Almost daily, things are
Yeah.
changing. And right across the political, apart from the political side, but all the stuff to do with the medical mandates and what have you, lots is coming out about that as well. So, absolutely. Where do you want to start?
Well, what I find really interesting is that we know that England, the UK, has been a PowerPoint on the earth for God knows how long, really, if you go back even to before the flood. But that area is so powerful. And of course, we know it's been rooted. We had enough people on the show from London and so on that have had hands on experience. But the crumbling seems to be coming from there. Like they pulled back all the mandates and just wiped everything clean. And now you got these people that are resigning. There's a few other leaks in that ship, so to speak. So that, to me, I find really interesting. Because there does seem to be a very obvious element that's involved no matter what narrative you follow, no matter what you believe. And there's this universal energy, is the only way I can explain it, that is keeping everything on a corrective course. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'd start. Whatever you want to do, though.
Well, the way that I've been looking at it is trying to see where the tide looks like it's turning from this total control that we've been experiencing for the last couple of years to a shift in public consciousness and mainstream consciousness, because the alternative community has grown. Everyone is starting, more and more people are recognizing they've been lied to. They're recognizing that a lot of these mandates have no basis in science. They are seeing the flaws in their government, and they're seeing also that the government seem to be ruled more by the bureaucrats or from some other agency that isn't in fact sovereign. So, and this is what I think finally is happening, that this is all breaking down because more and more people are getting the message. And even although there's still a lot of the main street buying what they're hearing, I find it quite fascinating from a kind of mindset that I'm seeing is with this whole thing to do with this jab, that, you know, this thing that people are taking, the blindness to the fact that that may be causing, you know, all these athletes to die,
Yeah.
pilots, you know, actually dying as well. And the blindness to the fact that what is being the cause of that, almost like absolute denial that it could possibly be linked to anything that's supposed, but ultimately then having to face the facts that people of all ages now are being affected, and it's become literally an epidemic of the dying, for all these different causes and what have you. So for me, that's been part of that wake up call. But on top of that, we've got governments literally falling apart, you know, right across the board, you know, where, you know, people are starting to question from, you know, France right through to those in Europe. We've got in the Netherlands in chaos now. We've got Britain, with Boris on his way out finally, and a lot of his cabinet. Look what's happening in the US. I mean, we've got what's happening here in America, Australia as well, where we've got, you know, a lot of politicians questioning now all these mandates, what's happened and what's the outcome. It's in a way like a bloodbath in terms of shift of people looking at this and realizing that it's all a sham,
Right.
that they're being led down the garden path. And what's fascinating to me is the numbers of people migrating into rural areas. You know, in terms of that, my little town that's normally 2,300 people has gone to 6,500 in 6 months.
What?
6 months to a year. This is our little town. It's trebled its population since the whole pandemic stuff happened. And what's that telling you? What's that saying about people realizing they don't want to be in the cities? They don't want to be under that control group, that they are literally bailing and coming into rural areas. And that's just my little bit of the world. That's an indicator, I think, of a greater reality where more and more people are going to rural areas, getting away from the cities, realizing there's going to be a lot more to worry about in terms of food limits, the whole mandates and everything else. So there's this mass, what can you call it, escape from anywhere where they think that they could be under that kind of control again. So there's no way they're going to get away with any other like this, because there's too many people now. I heard that, in fact, in America, that I think 70% actually did not comply.
I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that.
It's been blown up that, you know, so many people have, and it's the same here. I think there were only about 5 or 6 million that complied here. So all these numbers that are throwing out 80% and all the rest of it have all been a manipulation. So that in itself is quite heartening to realize that.
Yeah. And then this comment, and then another lady I ran into, but Heather Davis Nielsen, thank you for your comment. I believe you are right. In my area of Canada, people are leaving the city in droves for the country. I ran into somebody in the last 2-3 days, and forgive me, whoever it was. They were either from Idaho or had been there. And Idaho is like a Queensland area for us. It's on the Canadian border. It's very rustic, like Montana. And they were telling me that the fastest growing city in the country is Bismarck, Idaho, which is a very, I mean, by American terms, a desolate area. It's not like, I think in Montana there's like a million people. You know, I mean, that's not as big as the states are up there. So that would seem to hold true as well, because that'd probably be the 100th city you'd choose if you were trying to guess what's the fastest growing city in the country. So there's definitely something to that. And I guess energetically, the movement, so many people talking about movement, so many people on the move. You know, I'm told, put our stuff in storage and go get a hotel room and wait for directions. You know, and I've been on a ride ever since the 1st of June. But I think energetically, it says a lot. People,
Yeah.
even if they're not in these communities or they don't talk about these things, just moving out into these spaces where it's less dense is a really good sign. Yeah.
And it's also because I think people are afraid of food shortages. We do know all about the fact that these food processing plants are being blown up and what have you. Can you hear background, by the way?
What's that?
There is a background that I can hear of.
Yeah, that's some people talking in the hallway over here.
Oh,
I,
that's all right. It's okay.
I'll just mute myself until when you're done talking.
Okay.
But
No,
you were just saying something. What were you saying?
yeah. The
Oh,
food processing plants in the US that are burning down and what have you. So there seems to be, again, part of this other agenda, and I'm sure you know about the farmers being told to destroy their crops. You may be aware of the farmers being told to do that, or they'll be destroyed anyway.
yeah. This is interesting. A couple of things I can add to that. One from days back, and one just recently from a very special man, an ET. He's probably from your branch of the Tree of Life. I can't get him to come on, but he's an amazing individual, very well connected. A lot of recall past lives, a lot of recall galactic stuff. But the first story is my dad. My dad retired in, I don't know, late 80s from the government, Department of Labor, and then he went back into the system with the Department of Treasury and became a federal crop inspector. So this would have been late 80s, early 90s. It was a new initiative, and that initiative was obviously involving the insurance of crops, but the bottom line was they were basically being paid not to grow.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that I ran into here, who, like I said, is very connected. I mean, I'm talking probably one of the top 5 or 6 multidimensional personalities I've ever met. He was telling me, now he was called here about 10 years ago to clean up the area, etherically and so on. And he started to garden and plant edible, food from the garden. And he planted some seeds, and nothing grew. So he tapped into it, and what it was is they were microwaving the seeds. Because if you microwave the seeds for 15 seconds, they will not grow. Like it neutralizes them or something. So this is obviously, and we know this, we know that this has all been being orchestrated for a long, long time. But yeah, yeah,
Well, one of the things that I find myself doing intuitively is keeping the seeds from what I'm eating, whether it's lemons, oranges, or whether it's pumpkins or whatever. And I suddenly found myself wanting to save them. And I can't explain it, but I'm doing it. It's like, whether it's dates or whatever it is, I feel like it's a good idea to keep them. And that may be just me becoming an old lady and doing weird things, or just something else is prompting that. And it's just self sustainability. I think the more that people can do that, because although I think in the end it's going to come right, we're going to have a time transition where
yeah.
things will be really, really difficult.
Wow.
And that's what I feel is wise. If you can be where you can, even a small garden where you can grow a few things for yourself. I mean, I've got water tanks, so I've got my own water and what have you. But it's looking at things like that, that if, what they call the S hits the fan, you got for a while, then as much as you can do to be self-sustainable, I think the more important that is. Just for, I think, a limited time. I don't think it's going to be permanent, because I do believe that we are moving into a whole new way of living, and this is just this is the remainder of what is going on as we shift away from the old paradigm and we go into the new. What is brilliant for me is how many people are literally waking up now. I've never been so busy. And not only regarding not necessarily always wanting regressions, but wanting to open up and understand more of how they work multidimensionally so they can get their own answers. They can connect to their own team. And that has been exponential. And I'm meeting people who are accountants, lawyers, or I call them left brainers, and the PhDs and whatever. Not ones I would expect to want to know who their guides are, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's when I hear, well, I've been an accountant all my life, or I've been, I'm a lawyer, or I'm politicians, for example, people that I haven't expected in their professions. Also, those within psychiatry, psychiatric nurses, which I find is interesting. That there we've got psychiatric nurses that are wanting to open up near voices, as we call it, or connector voices, knowing full well in their profession that if you start talking about that, you're going to be considered suspect. So there's this kind of real openness now to, this is what I need to do. This is the only way I'm going to start to understand what's going on. And it's even more vital now, given the fact that we've got all this information out there, what to trust, what to believe, what actually makes sense. Where are we going with this? What do I have to do to remain sane and grounded with all this craziness going on? What do I focus on? All those kinds of choices come a lot easier once you have that connection and that source to your superconscious self, and of course the team, whoever that team is, whether they're a mantis being or a blue guy with black eyes or an energy being. I get the lot, from flippers to
Flippers.
I've got what, they'll say, but it's like frog feet. And I'm going, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? What color is the skin? Have they got any clothes on? But there's something around the neck. What's that? Oh, I think it's a bit of technology. And afterwards they say, how could I have a guide that looks like that? And I said, well, they're challenging you to accept difference.
Right.
Because they can actually show you a form, any kind of form if they wish.
Right.
But they want to understand that intelligence can be in any form.
Right.
And even though they may show you, and often if they show an unusual form, often it's because you're connected to that form with them in another life. So it's unusual. Ask them why you've got that particular form shown to you, and often they'll say it's because of our connection. The reason that they're with me now is to remind me I was this form or whatever. I mean, I've talked to one young man who said he was from the future, and again, it was, my form in the future was as a grey with 4 digits, for example. So it's about people connecting to not just their present awareness, but their many lifetimes of source of information that they've connected to in other lives, in other forms, in other realities, in other dimensions, in other timelines, etc., etc. What's happening is they're connecting to the greater reality of who they are, and why they've come this time on this planet to make a difference with their skills and with their awareness and with their understanding. And that's what we've got. We've got these intelligences that have come in human form, that have come from all over the cosmos and other universes at this time. So it's fascinating, when I talk about the family where one 17-year-old alone has connected to about 250 different forms of intelligence, and she draws them all. That's just one in the family. The others in the family, not so many, but they're all drawing different forms of beings they're connecting to in the whole family. So
now, is this through the sessions with you, or is it in the sessions and also just in their daily life that this is happening?
This is them doing this totally independent of me. Whoa. This was primarily because I spoke to the mother who was having extraordinary experiences and connecting to other lives. not only in other planets, but this particular planet as well. But all her children are drawing different beings they're connecting to, and they're doing it quite spontaneously.
Wow.
So this is nothing to do with me in that sense, other than they've shared their stories with me in who it is and how they understand themselves. They're connecting to the animals, talking to the animals, to plants, to crystals,
Mm.
mammals. So their expansion is not just to all sentient life on this planet, but also in the cosmos. And we know there are countless civilizations out there, and many of them are interacting with us on this planet now, particularly if you've come in from one of those sources as a soul from one of those places. You are still going to keep in touch with the family,
Mm.
as I call it, because it's part of your soul family.
Yeah, and what you said about this contact with sentient, life, and how, because what you were talking about with like innately you're saving seeds, right? Or innately people are knowing move out into the country, right? Or even before I left, we hit spring over here, and Arkansas has got a lot of critters, and
Mm,
my house exploded with spiders.
mm.
And for about 6 or 8 weeks, I developed a conscious relationship with a house full of spiders.
Yeah,
And the deal was, I will not remove any of you.
yeah.
I will see if what we can do. So I had one making a web on my bathroom vanity counter as I'm trying to shave or grab my toothpaste, and I said to it, "Look, I don't know what I'm doing here, but we're all finding this connectivity. Nothing's left out." And I said, "Can you please move your web, like to the top of the mirror instead of down here where I got all my stuff?" And sure enough, a couple days later, it was at the top, and then it happened 2 or 3 more times. So I think there is something to these things that we're talking about, these examples I just brought up as an example, that there's something innate that's literally waking up. And I think this story that you're talking about with this family, it gives me chills, because that's extraordinary to be happening real time without your guidance, with your counsel because of your experience. But think about that. If it's happening there, where else is it happening? And if that's a microcosm of, say, a town or a street, it would only make sense to me if you get a couple of people that are lit in the family and there's 5 in the house, it's only going to explode. And I think the other thing that you kind of went over quickly, but I want to go back to it and just kind of point it out. We all had, I think you didn't, but I had a 9/11 moment. Like that was the first wave of like, because I was saying what you said, which was, no, this can't be. They wouldn't do this. And so I think what you were describing is what's happening now as a consequence of everything associated with what we call COVID. Uh, and like I was telling you, some of the stuff I've been following the last few days, one of the one of the most dynamic pieces of paper or documents I've seen has been where, and this was a government document that was saying that the vaccine was not a vaccine. That, and this is a government. This is I don't know what branch it was or what it was. It was a sub department of a bigger, but it said that a vaccine reduces the virus presence. Like it may be in there and what they give you, and that this one was not doing that, and that this one was moving the other direction, actually creating more of it. So because of that, that was one of the points that they were basing this potential fraud thing. So I mean, people read these things, and it's all it's going to take. Or they see somebody talking about it. Hey, is that true? So I think it's the dominoes are starting to fall. I think that's what you're saying basically, and you would know because you can kind of measure the collective through the volume of the people calling you and the type of people, like these professionals.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I mean, it's blowing me away with the numbers that are now having a form of activation. And some happened at 2012 when people said, well, nothing really happened. Well, actually, a lot happened. Many of those that had their awakening was around that time. But there's been another awakening over these last couple of years. It's as though this has been the real time for people to realize what's going on. And it's needed to be this dark for people to actually get the message, to actually see that the government isn't your friend. All right? And then sadly, the medical profession isn't your friend anymore, you know? There's agendas behind everything that's going on now. And once you see it in one level, you can see it all the way along and what have you. And it's all coming out. It's coming out through all sorts of things. Even the mainstream can't keep quiet about all of it. I mean, it's about all the biolabs they've got in Ukraine at the moment that are coming
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah,
people
let's
are
talk about that. I
reporting.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
I've seen some stuff being leaked lately that's far more than the biolabs in Ukraine. It involves a long-standing, uh, investment, I guess, like post World War II in Ukraine, and it's like we're talking infrastructure of the controllers or whatever, the 1% or whatever you want to call it. There's a bunch of stuff going on there, and then there's also, and I know there's a lot of propaganda and counter propaganda and so on, but reports of now that this has been going on a while, where the Ukraine people are not pro-Ukraine government. That doesn't mean they're pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia, but they're like
Yeah.
going, "Hey, this government, what they're saying and what's happening are two different things." So, you know, is that true? I don't know, but there sure is a lot of stuff going on, and as much money as the U.S. is pumping over there, which is in the hundreds of billions. I think there's been 3 waves of assistance. Well, who's getting the money? So
Yeah.
this is the same old game.
Well, what's also in there is the space arts being activated
Yeah,
that Russia knows about. And this is all the technology that is going to be our legacy.
right.
But, and of course, I believe it's also that they want to stay in control of as these space arcs are being activated. It's like when they went into Iran and
Yes,
deposed there. What was interesting with that, I only found out that it was because of technologies,
that's right.
ancient technology they went for. It was nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, other than the fact that this technology perhaps could have that kind of impact.
Right,
But that was you notice the museum in Baghdad that was raided,
right.
but they also said that he and his sons knew about this technology as well. Now, the backstory for me was I was in touch with a wonderful lady who is a very wonderful psychic medium in England. And when all this was going on, she said, Mary, my guides have come through and said, what's really going on there is this technology. She said that after this ancient technology that is highly dangerous, and the US want it for themselves. So at the time, I happened to know a guy in American intelligence, and I asked him about it. I said, is there any legs to this? In terms of this technology, apparently that the US are after, and this is why they've really gone in there. And he said to me in a very, very careful email, Mary, don't talk about it, don't ring anyone about it, share it, don't do anything. And it actually spooked me because I
Yeah,
thought it was, oh, come on, But and then of course I found out that in fact there was some real basis to that.
yeah,
Uh, so there's always these layers, and unfortunately, a lot of the public haven't got a clue
yeah.
about really what's going on. I just say
Right,
question everything that you hear, because often there's another layer upon another layer upon another layer. And as you start working through it, you start to see more and more of what's actually going on. And these space arcs, I think, are very genuine. In terms of the one that the lady I regressed who saw these symbols in this space ark near Bimini, and she said she's getting more information. She's working with some more remote viewers, and they are noticing that in other places there are these space arcs as well, which are being activated by consciousness. And
Wow.
that's going to be made available. So that's interesting. And I'm being exposed more to the secret space program as well, and what's actually going on with all of that, those that have been involved in that program. And interestingly, we wonder why so many in the military are the ones that their children and the fathers
Yes.
in the military. And, it was pretty obvious to me, because you've got a captured um, population, haven't you,
Right.
for the military to actually use what's to hand, which is their own recruits, their own people. So that's why often it's related. They'll say, oh, my dad was in the Air Force, or my dad was in the Navy, or whatever. And that's why I'm part of this program. And what's interesting about those programs is that they will collect children often from school
Yeah.
and tell them they're going certain places and
Yeah.
whatever. That's all right while they are part of this program.
That's
And
right.
I've regressed quite a few now that said, but my dad accepted it. It was like he was programmed too. And he accepted that I was going to be involved in this. So you've got this compliance through whatever means, whether or not they're fully aware of, the parents are fully aware, or the father's fully aware of what he's allowing. I'm not sure, but it's almost like they're part of it, either willingly or not, or programmed into
Yeah.
allowing children to be involved. So that's why it's very much in the forces, because it's they've got the population that they need
Yeah.
with all these secret programs.
Yeah, they're already obedient. That's a really good point you made up too, because I can validate some of that, because I remember when I got a laptop and started interacting with people when I came out the street, like summer of 2013. So it was still fresh in this phase we're in. If you figure 2012 is when it started. And what I was noticing, because I was doing, I guess, in my own way, a little bit of practitioner work, it would just come naturally and organically. And I noticed a pattern. And the pattern was sexual violation, sexual, I would say, torture, psychotic episodes, psych wards, medication. And they were pretty much covered in about 4 states: Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. And I would ask them, after a while, I kind of caught on. I went, was your dad in the military? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. They talked about handlers. They were having, memories come in. They didn't fit, but I had this memory. I was in a cave and they put this machine on me and I was up against the wall and they were, just stuff like, where does that come from? But also these people that I was interacting with, very high frequency. They were just a fish out of water, in the paradigm that we were coming out of. Now, another thing that's interesting, I got a hold of this person that I was talking about earlier, the one that I can't get on the show. So he's got a long history involving a lot of different things we would call, psychic. One of those being remote viewing. And the information this guy has is incredible. But I asked him, I said, what happened? What's going on with the underground bases? Because we were kind of talking about what he knew about what's going on now that's not being talked about. And he said a lot of them, as a lot of people have reported, have been destroyed. But he said the one thing that hasn't been is the mass transit, or whatever, I don't know what they call it, supersonic transit, where you can go from the West Coast to New York in 20 minutes, or U.S. to Australia in a short period of time. And I guess my point there is, and I think you definitely do this. We try to do this and to try to remain neutral and just talk about what's going on, and really keep the focus on ourselves and what we can contribute energetically through our own self-work and so on. But there's also, and you mentioned this earlier with the secret space and what you were talking about before, there's a lot of technology that's literally going to turn this world upside down when it's introduced. I mean, that's because we often talk about, the blood and the guts,
Yes.
the trip. But I mean, we're more than on the precipice. We're right in the middle of this now, I think.
I think that's why I have a great deal of hope, in terms of, I was told by one whistleblower that they have technology 30 years in advance of what we have access to, and it's probably even more than that in some instances. In terms of, we've got things like Project Looking Glass, of course, which
Right.
you will know about, where they know the future. Depending on whatever action they take, they can see the future of that. And that's the one thing that's freaking them out at the moment, because apparently they tried all sorts of different actions to continue their program, but they all ended up with humanity waking up and awakening. So that, they're on a loser in that sense. It's just how long can they prolong the agony, before they actually lose it completely. And I always said, and I've made a joke of it sometimes, that, I don't believe a lot of these new generations of human that, know their star origins, have come in with this awareness, have not come in for a waste of time.
No.
They wouldn't have bothered if they felt that they couldn't make a difference. They wouldn't have bothered to incarnate. I'm certain I wouldn't have done. I would have had an argument with whoever it was.
I still have them.
I say, no, no, thanks. I'll give that one a miss. Tell me when it works, and I'll come down. So I feel that with all the skills that are coming and the awareness that's coming, plus this technology that will redefine what we understand as our reality in every sense, is coming.
Right.
There's no way to stop it. We are
Right.
living in an archaic paradigm in every sense of the word. I mean, some people make the whole thing about us still using fossil fuels. We've done that for 100 years. What is that? It's ridiculous, when
Hmm.
Tesla was talking about free energy and all the rest of it. So at some point, that's got to change. And I think it's about hanging in there and trusting the process of that shift, which is actually going on now.
Yeah.
And regarding the dams and all of that, I've heard, like you have, there's a lot of clearing out going on, and I believe a lot of the flooding that's going on in Australia at the moment. I mean, we've had more water in this little town than I've seen in 13 years of being here.
Wow.
But down in the eastern, New South Wales and what have you, the floods have been extraordinary. And some have said because they're flooding the dams,
Wow.
flooding that
Yeah,
now.
Morgan's over at what is it? It was Gimpy.
Yeah,
It was Gimpy, and now she's in Puna. But she was talking about, like, for like, I think it was about a 2 week period, that at the same time every day, really like early evening, right
yeah,
after dark, this
right. That's
the
right.
system would form, and then it
Mm,
would come in and just
yeah,
drench everything. I saw
yeah,
some pictures, and it was the same thing. It was like a 2 week period, and it was primarily in the northern part of Texas, and then it would spread into like Oklahoma and Arkansas, where I was. And it was and I saw pictures of these weather systems, and I'm not talking about aerial or
yeah,
or out up in the clouds. I'm talking about from the ground, and they look like tsunamis in
yeah.
the air. Have you seen those? That's crazy.
Oh, they've admitted they're cloud seeding. And then there's the floods, in Tasmania. They were moaning at the government, saying you're cloud seeding, and then we get all this rain. This is flooding people. But what's interesting about Gympie, and Morgan will know this, of the Gympie pyramid that was actually destroyed virtually by, the councils and what have you. There's barely anything left of the Gympie pyramid now. But what's interesting is it's a ley line, it's an energy line. The reason the pyramid's there, and people may not know that the gold from Gympie was part of Tutankhamun. In fact, a lot of the gold in Tutankhamun was in fact from Gympie when the Egyptians came over.
Wow.
So that's a connection to Egypt, because
Yes.
our history is that the Egyptians came here.
Well, I mean, obviously, even here in Sedona, where I'm at, they have plenty of examples of Egyptian hieroglyphs and stuff. I mean, stuff that doesn't fit over here. I mean, based on what we were told, which is another thing. We've got so many things that are going to wake us up, I guess you could say. But anyone that does any just minimal research into hidden technology, into revised history, you can go back to the late 1800s. There's all giants all over, not like, the majority of the population, but there are spaces, Catalina Island in California, a lot of places in the North America where they had giants, through stories, through bones. I mean, you've got the mud slide, that narrative. But yeah, in technology, I saw some stuff the other day that looked very credible. I spent about an hour and a half with it because I was like, oh, is this somebody just putting this up as clickbait? And what it was because that whole thing, like with the world fairs, how they put these monstrosities, little cities up in months and destroyed them and took them down in days. I mean, it was like, what's going on? But some of the things I saw were like small engine operated, like everything. It was like a hoverboard type of thing to a baby carriage to a little scooter. And this was like 1880, 1890. So I have a feeling that one of the things we're going to learn is when we talk about mind swipe. Obviously there's a lot of individuals that are like in the secret space program that are coming out with these memories coming back and so on, and even through work like yours. But I think we've had a collective mind swipe kind of thing going on that we had to get to a certain point in our evolution in order to not be susceptible to it anymore. So I think that's going to be a big wake-up call for people when they say, well, like I just look at something like, we went to the moon and we stopped going. They say they lost all the pictures. They say they lost the technology. I heard this straight from the head of NASA like a week and a half ago. Well, we lost that technology. We're getting it back now. Like, come on. Then you see weird stuff like Werner von Braun wrote a book. And a guy named Elon took everyone to Mars. It's just, you can't make it up.
Well, I think when people realized there was a lot more going on in Germany, because they were in touch with beings that gave them a lot of the technology. And even though it was apparent that it felt like they'd lost the war in Operation Paperclip, as many will know, is the scientists, some of them, they were all spread out. Some went to the US, some went to the UK, some went to Russia. But when you think about those particular scientists that went and brought all that technology, they ended up helping the US government, but also helping their philosophy to continue, because a lot of them ended up in very powerful positions and what have you. Germany didn't lose the war. We know that.
No.
It was a put up job, and and Hitler ended up, I think, in Argentina.
Yeah.
From the latest research that's come
Yeah,
out.
and Byrd went down with that giant armada in 47, 48, and got killed and they just got annihilated. I mean, this is really exciting stuff because it's taking on a physical property. To me, it's like I had two ladies come by today, beautiful ladies like yourself. One of them lives in Taos, New Mexico. She bought some land there, so a river runs through it, and years go by, and she builds a temple. And her friend from UK comes, and then they're in Sedona, and we just kind of connected. And it was all so present moment, and there was such a physicality to it, like the let's just say the higher frequency bands kind of bleeding in. So as she was leaving, they were showing me their pictures just to the last few days. And I mean to tell you, everything from looking at known rock formations that people are familiar with here, like Thunder Mountain or Bell Rock, faces that were protruding from the rock in the picture. Then I saw clearly two angels in the clouds. I saw she was going through New Mexico, and she kind of drove through or into or near an inner earth portal. And she's a very highly sensitive lady. She's been on the show. And she said all of a sudden they were there, and they started talking to me. And she looks up, stops the car, looks up, and then in a cloud, there's this perfect face of this being, and it's just like inexplicable. Then it goes down the road, and another picture of a clear, illuminated light ship, and it was as clear as day. I said, "You need to get this stuff out there," you know. But their point was in this ceremony where they kind of, I guess, you know, initiated this circle, the sacred circle temple. It had all the elements. It had the mother, it had Archangel Michael, it had the masculine, it had the feminine, it had the directions, it had the elementals. But they were just talking about how everything is coming together, right? And and their trip being perfect evidence of that because it's all over the board.
Yeah.
Dragons, you know, spaceships.
I've realized that you can't actually dismiss anything, no matter how outrageous it may appear at the time. And I remember thinking when I first got into all of this, there were certain things I thought, oh no, I can't accept that, or I can't accept that. But I would put it in these boxes and say, well, I'll look at it again if I get more information on it. And inevitably I would, to the point where that became the norm. And then there'd be something else that would challenge me. And I've often said that I feel like my paradigm is an ice floe that I'm standing on. And as I get more information, it melts and I have to create a new one. You know? Because you've got to be adaptable now to realizing you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And there is so much more beyond our wildest dreams. Is what I was more or less told by my team was, don't even try and work it out, Mary, because you can't right now. You can't even conceive of how this is all going to change. And that in itself, I believe, is why we've all got rough idea that it's monumental, but we can't really put it into a box because it is monumental in terms of what's going to happen.
Yeah, this last, a lot of people talked about June. You know, we do this every month. Oh my God, this is a whole new, but there, you know, mine coincided, I guess, and maybe that's why, because I moved out of our place, put everything in storage. I'd been trying to set up a Soulogy Fest in Arkansas. I was not having any luck. I was going to do it late September, give people plenty of time. And the day I move out, as I'm moving out, guy says, hey, I know this place. And I'm like, well, next day I'm there. And then they tell me, you got to move it up a month because we have a conflict. And I'm thinking, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then I hear, do it anyway. But the short of it is, it has remained that way right up to this point. And I keep having this conversation like we talk about. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't working. Like, or give me more, you know, whatever my complaint is. And they just keep telling me, like never before, you go out and do your part. You go out and do this, and you do it your way. And just let go. We got your back, kind of thing. And it's like, this is what everyone's doing now. The ladies that came in today, this is what they're doing now. My two friends that came to visit yesterday, 64-year-old and 70-year-old German ladies that got rid of all their stuff 4 months ago, were told to go to Sedona, are now living in a room looking for a house, but going out and doing grid work every day. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, this is some powerful stuff, but it's being supported now. I don't think that we have the handicap of being so weird now, thanks to you, basically, and a lot of people like you. But you know, that's been the thing for a lot of people that come into this community. I know, and I think many light worker communities, they say, I thought I was crazy. I'm not alone anymore. So not only are they getting that validation, but they're also starting to move up a gear in their purposes. And that's got to be energetically the type of energy that would activate these, these objects that we were talking about earlier, these discs.
I think that the overriding way to be right now is to be in the moment, to be present at this moment in time, doing what you can do, what's feasible for you, what feels right, and that's the advice that I was given by my team is don't try and even think about the future other than it's there at some point, but it may not be what you expect. But
Right.
I was told not to travel this year at all, no
Really?
matter what looked like things were easing and all the rest of it. It was no, Mary, you don't go anywhere this year. And I've turned down a number of things, even though it's looking safer.
Yeah, but it's always a paradox. It's always upside down. So,
And well, we know the government can turn on its head
yeah,
overnight.
yeah,
So, what seems safe today may not seem safe tomorrow. And they're just saying, don't go anywhere. Stay where you are for the moment.
yeah,
And that's what I'm doing. Next year is another ball game. I'll wait and see what happens. But I've got a real feeling that we're going to know far more clearly the way ahead fairly soon. I feel it's sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, just as you're doing, is informing, giving
yeah,
people enough information to sit with what they're tuning into and what they resonate with, and learning to trust that part of themselves. Because now we're going to need to do that. You know what? I always go back to the 7-year-old that told me he knew when someone was speaking the truth and when someone was lying, and how he felt warm when it was the truth and cold when it wasn't the truth, was his way of resonating to truth. And we've lost that through our programming. We've lost that through being in a 3D manufactured reality. And it's about rediscovering that essence of ourselves and who we are, so that we can actually start connecting to that source of truth, which is, I think, the most important now, given what's going on. And more people are actually doing that. So,
yeah,
to me, that's evidence of huge changes now, that people are starting to trust that. So that makes me really hopeful, more
yeah.
than that, positive.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the travel thing too, because obviously Morgan and I are entangled in that at the time. We're at this time. We have her docs are in immigration. We've got some people helping us. She'd like to get out of Australia, like a lot of people. You know what I mean? And especially if they want to be, like in our case, we want to be
Yeah,
somewhere together, whatever. And that's what we were talking about this the other day, and I was like, you know, like you could go here or go there until everything comes. But
yeah,
I think there does need to be some serious consideration to even for me traveling through the states, because there's some good states and there's some not so good states. There might as well be countries, because that's kind of the way it's starting to work now. The states are starting to like pull
yeah,
away. But yeah, I think it's worth some consideration and contemplation, meditation, and obviously eventually discernment, to be careful where you're at, because
yeah,
it could literally. And I said this to her the other day. Do you think the world could just stop? Well, they already did it once,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you know
And,
it's
and it's to suit them. It'll be when it suits them, and it'll be when people start to relax
yeah,
again and say, "Oh, things are starting to move now. Things are getting back to normal." And I'm saying, "No, that's just when they bring the clamps again, particularly Australia, because
yes,
letting you back in if you've not had the medical protocols could be a big nightmare for you. And so it's not just going to a place which is open and accepting,
right,
and have dropped all the mandates. You've got to get back into Australia again, and this changes overnight.
yeah,
We've got also, a big concern for me is the number of pilots that have, literally died with heart attacks and what have you. I've forgotten how many now. I think they're keeping it quiet. That's why a lot of the airlines are in chaos. They're blaming all sorts of things, but it's because they don't have the pilots. Because a lot of them have either chosen not to have the jab, so they're not available, or the ones that have been, some of them have died.
yeah.
And this is all being covered up as
Yeah, I know
well.
it is. I saw two airlines over here, one in Dallas, and I saw the footage, and I was pleasantly surprised, really, because it was like a picket line.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what is that? I think it was Southwest. It may have been Southwest. And then they started talking, and it was a news report, which was a local news report, and it was they were basically protesting
Yeah.
because the conditions have gotten so bad, and it had to do, particularly the pilots, because they were all out there in their uniforms, and it
Yeah.
had to do with having to work too many hours, having to getting to a point where it's almost like this isn't safe protocol. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably, to your point, one of the main reasons, if not the reason, that we're having so many cancellations here.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. And I feel it's going to get worse because we know that I think the latest stats here were 114,000 adverse reactions now they found to the jab. Yeah, 114,000. It was Senator Roberts mentioned it in Parliament. He
Really.
said, normally you get 20 or 30 people having adverse reactions, they stop the protocol. He said 114,000 are documented that have been accepted as adverse reactions to this. He said, I mean, it's unprecedented that more than I think people have died from, you know, drugs and all sorts of things in the last X number of years. I mean, something incredible. He laid it all out in Parliament
Mm.
and why we've got to stop this stuff being given to people.
I'll tell you another thing that I find kind of interesting. I know, I know that ultimately, those that are pulling the strings, it's not the USA, and it's not, it's they're
Yeah.
groups, of anonymous groups or whatever. But there is, if you look at Canada and Australia and the way that they came out and are still, Canada is
Mm.
still probably a bit more stringent than Australia now, but at least that's what they're saying. But
Mm.
they're tied to England. They're tied to the crown. Yet the
Mm.
crown, or that central location, is deconstructing, as we talked about at the top of the show. And I'm just wondering, again, everything's always the opposite.
Mm.
Maybe what we thought, where they were congregating, or where they were centralized, they're
Mm.
not. And
Mm.
because I find Australia to be a really interesting thing. I still think it's going to be the place, like ground zero. Like
Mm.
like but like for instance, I saw the announcement they had where they said you
Mm.
can travel now and all that, and I read through the thing. But then I saw comments on it, and there was something in the works with this new regime or whatever, legislation or whatever, and they didn't say what they were going to do. They just said
Mm.
we're about to come out with this, and
Yeah.
the verbiage kind of correlated with what they just got rid of. So, to your point, and that might be why you're getting the guidance not to travel,
Mm.
because to conclude that and go back to what I started with, I don't think after what's happened, awake or not awake or whatever, that
Mm.
if they were to come down, like say in that scenario, because we know what happened there, and put the screws in again, I don't think people are gonna be very cooperative,
No.
especially if, as you were talking in the U.S. and even over there, 20-25% actually got the procedure. I mean, there's, regardless of what's been told, this innate movement and this knowing people have, whether they're in these circles or not, I mean, they're superseding. I just don't see it. I don't see people falling in line. It's because y'all have been through a lot. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
flooding,
Yeah.
and even prior to COVID with the fires, and it's almost like a setup to me.
I think it's an absolute setup. And what they've used is, the Australian psyche is one, she'll be right, mate. Is we're very relaxed. They'll put up with a great deal because, it's more interesting. It's a sunny day. Let's go surfing. So that's the kind of philosophy. But you really push someone here to a point where they think now it's not okay,
Right.
then you've got a whole new ball game. I mean, the Aussies were amazing in the wars. When it came to courage and it came to determination and strength, they were up there.
Right.
And That's the Aussie spirit. And if they feel that things are unjust and that they're being lied to and what have you, and they're finding that out in big numbers, you've got a different ball game on your hands, and it isn't going to be one that's compliant.
Mm-mm.
And I think that it will show itself
Yeah.
in, without question, it will show itself. And I think that we are getting more and more of that now, where people are saying, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah.
I've I've gone that way. It's not worked. They're realizing that this thing doesn't protect them,
No.
that people are dying. We've got children dying now from having this, babies dying.
Yeah, that's
We've got pregnant women losing their babies because they've had this. It's coming out, and it's coming out. There's doctors coming out in Australia, like the US, that are saying, we're seeing this. It's wrong. They shouldn't be given this. We're seeing it, and we can't live with this anymore. We can't do this anymore. We're not going to be blackmailed into doing this protocol, which we know isn't making, in fact, is harming people. End of.
That's right.
So it's coming out right across the board. So I don't think they're going to be able to try that again. I think there's going to have to be something very different, because they didn't quite make it this time, and they certainly won't this time.
Yeah. 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 I mean, some of the people that I've talked to, and I've mentioned this to you before, and this person that I was referring to a couple of times in the show today, I asked him, I believe I've asked you, the intel is end of 2023, going into 2024, whatever the time frame is, we start to be ruled by councils at all levels. And I was asking this soul here, and it was an immediate yes. And I said, well, are the upper echelons of what we know of this, the world infrastructure, are they onto all this? and he was like, yes, they are. And what they're trying to do is what you just said. That's why I felt like it was worthy to mention, that they're actually trying to find a solution, because they know if they don't, they're out of it. That's all going to be just ripped away. I think the after effects, or that's probably not a good word to use, the effects of the whole COVID thing, and is going to be what takes it all down. So what a gift. Do you? I was going to ask you, have you been censored at all?
Sorry?
Have you been censored at all since early 2020?
Well, I have. I've been kicked off Facebook a couple of times for saying things I didn't like or whatever. That's the nearest. But I'm very careful with my words,
right,
and how I explain things. So I mean, it's that they're looking for certain and all the rest of it. So that's the nearest that I've got, really.
Yeah. I was just curious.
What's interesting is, like I'm sure you found, you can talk about all the ET stuff, you can talk about all the psychic stuff and what have you, but if you get into either politics or medical stuff, then you can offend people that don't agree with you, even though they might be tapped into all of that. They're not tapped into perhaps the whole mandates and the political stuff. But I asked my team about that, and I said, look, I'm feeling really strongly about this. I've seen the red flags. I'm working this out, and it's not good, this stuff. I can't be silent.
Yes.
I don't care whether or not it fits in with all my other research. My research is telling me this is dark stuff, and I can't sit and not say something. And if people don't like the stance that I've taken, well, that's just too bad, because I'm
I love it.
If we can't speak our truth here, what is the point of living?
That's right.
That's the way I look at it. What is the point? If we're living scared of everything we say is going to offend someone or upset someone because it's opposite to what they want to believe, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to stop saying my truth just because you don't like it.
That's
because
right.
It's, this is what we came here to do. If we did that to everyone, we wouldn't have any kind of freedom whatsoever, we'd all be, in a situation like China, where, you can't breathe without getting, some kind of acceptance how many times you can breathe.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want that?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be offended occasionally because somebody says something you don't agree with? Actually, it's quite fun to have different opinions.
It is. It's
It
healthy.
adds it adds to the whole tapestry
Yeah.
of consciousness. So yeah, disagree with me. That's fine. Let's have a chat about it and why we have different perspectives. Let's enjoy the dialogue
Yeah.
rather than blame someone or be angry because they don't comply with how you want to believe.
That's right.
To me, that's healthy.
It is healthy. It's playing to that quality as a strength instead of a weakness.
Yeah.
Because really, and going back to what you're saying earlier, like they're throwing everything at us at this point, or they're grasping at straws. One of the main things they've used is division, and because of the level of innate knowing, I think these false flag frequencies aren't working. Obviously, they've gone down. We know that, but the division isn't
Yeah.
working like it was before either, which is really just a way to capture our attention or move our attention away from some of the stuff that we're talking about. But I don't see that either. I see people are especially when they, like what happened over there was extraordinary. I mean, the way people came to the aid of people in Linsmore, and I mean from hours and hours away, and just the way that people talk. I'm on a few Aussie like community boards, and just partners that are living apart, and what the spirit of what people. I mean, I was reading a couple this morning on the site where it's partners that are separated, and the enthusiasm and encouragement of people just. I'm going to put this out there because don't want people to give up. This has been 2 years. We finally got an exemption. I go to the airport. I can't get on the plane. We're not giving up. I mean, it's like you can feel it. Like they're pulling together. Yeah.
And I think that's not what was expected, that people would care enough about one another, that because of whoever it is that's orchestrating this, they're so dark and so in their own self-serving mindset. They are pushing that, or expecting us as a species to do the same. And what's been startling is that actually we've not, because so many people are connecting to the greater to humanity itself, connecting to the greater consciousness and saying, this isn't me. I am not self-serving in this way. I care about other people. And that's what has been, I think, a big shock to their system, because they expected everyone to be as self-serving as they are,
Right.
and the ones at the top, and finding out, well, actually, no, people have wanted to open their hearts and help other people. I'll give you a bit of an example. It's completely different to that, but I needed a plumber the other day, and for my loo, and this lovely old guy who's lived here about 25 years wanders in, and he's limping a little bit with his ankle. So I said, what's up with your ankle? And he said, oh, I've had it sore and what have you, but I've got this ointment, he said, that somebody made for me, somebody else making homemade ointment. I won't tell you what's in it, but anyway. And he says, and I said, oh, I've got this really bad elbow. I think I've got a bit of tendonitis. I said, and I'm, wondering what to do. He says, tell you what, he says, have you got a little jar? And I said, yeah. So he goes to his van, picks out this homemade little jar of stuff that he's rubbing on his ankle, and he gives me some and says, here you are. He says, it's really good stuff, rub it in and what have you, and it's really good stuff. He says, but don't eat it.
Don't eat it like you're a kid.
No, well, there's a reason for that. I won't go into what's in it, but
Right.
There's a reason why he said don't eat it. But what I'm saying is, this is what you get with good people.
Yeah.
You're helping each other out.
Yeah.
He was saying, oh, you've got a sore thing, let me give you some of what I have.
Yeah.
This is my point. It's a generosity of spirit that I'm seeing, what's happening because of this. that is coming to the fore, and more people are helping each other, supporting each other, and showing their love for each other. And that is what will save this planet and
Yeah.
save humanity.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it it really anchors the synchronicities too, which are so important, because we do go through we do go through a lot. It's sure nice to feel these synchronicities, especially when they involve people, because that's what's happened to me. I came in what many, and they may be correct, perceive as a chaotic state, but the minute I came, everything just started fitting. Like
Yeah.
the right person shows up, and we need a cord. My friend needs a cord, and I've got an extra one just sitting there. I don't even know where it came from, and like it
Yeah.
just fits. Even the people that drop by and we do a show. I had these two ladies today, and there were so many synchronicities
Yeah.
that connected through one story, the other story, my story, and like, wait, I got this, and you had that, and then
Yeah.
at the end of the hour, we have like 29 puzzle pieces that
Yeah.
were laying on the table are now all put together, and it's like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
and the fact too that it involves everything. We talk spaceships, we talk divine essences, we talk inner Earth, we talk about us, as human beings. What's actually happening? I think the word evolution you used, they used. I mean, this is huge, and God, it sure feels like we're close. It really does to me. Not to say that what you're saying and what others have said, who I have a lot of, I give a lot of credibility to, that we might have a little rough spot coming up, and I think that might have something to do with your guidance of not moving. Just
Yeah.
stay where you're at. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
But
yeah, go ahead.
um, I think we are manifesting exactly what we need to manifest right now. And I think the manifestation is almost instant, it
Yeah,
seems. Well, that's how it's seeming to me. So I'm trusting that. I'm putting out, this is what I want for the rest of my life. And I want it also for humanity. I want it
yes.
for all those that come after me.
Yeah, that's been, in fact, I've had so many conversations, what I can only describe as a mother energy for the last 2 weeks. Like she just came and moved in with me or something. And it's all been about, it's really time now.
Yeah.
Go get them, Tiger. Like it's up to you.
Mm.
But one of those, like exercises that she's taken me through has been, what do you want? What do you want? Really think about it. Lay it
Mm.
out. So I put like 5 things on the table, and I said, this is what I want.
Mm.
And she said, go get them now. Go make it happen. Converge them
Yeah.
all together and go make them happen. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people in the world doing this. I mean, I really do. Like, I can't get over these ladies that are 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. I met an 87-year-old, and they're
Yeah.
like doing this crazy stuff. And I'm like, this, this energetically, even if nobody knows about them, that's some
Mm.
powerful, powerful magic. Like
Yeah.
that's just
Right.
like, that's crazy. You would
Mm.
think they're going to be in a chair. No offense, but like taking it easy. It's the end of their life. No, they're out there gung ho. These ladies
Yeah.
that came here today are going to go to some special place I've never heard of. That you got to get in a car. Now this is the mountains and the
Yeah.
deserts of Arizona, and you got to get in a car with a guide and drive through, I guess what you would call the outback.
Yeah.
For 2.5 hours to get to a sacred spot
Oh,
that
wow.
they're going to do. I mean, that's devotion. That's inspiration.
Yeah.
And it's also energy. And I think that's probably another way to look at it too, is the energy we're putting out now is conscious and it's clean, and
Mm.
we're getting it back. Like you said,
Yeah.
much faster every day.
Yeah.
I saw, before we get out of here, I saw Jen Reynolds she's one of our
Mm.
vocal contributors in our communities. But she had mentioned that I put your book on the promo for this post, and You know, every month I run into people talking about your work and particularly this last book. Anyway, when Jen saw the post, she goes, "I just got her book. It's coming to me." So I would imagine that. So it's been about what, a year and a half since you released that book? Is it?
No, since 2016.
2016.
End of,
Okay.
yeah. I keep being asked when's the next one, actually. But what I did say when I was writing it, I said to the team, I said, make it comprehensive because I don't want to write another one for quite a long time. You know, because it's so exhausting, but it's still doing really, really well. And what really blows me away is how many more of mainstream are starting to open up to some of the concepts in the book itself, like clinical psychologists and educators and
Wow.
parents that are seeing differences in the children, particularly clinical psychologists that seem to be, you know, some are a lot more aware than others. And they're seeing these children and saying everything you're speaking about is what I'm seeing. It's whether or not, you know, I can get the parents to at least understand a little bit more about what's going on with them. So that's really been heartening because I thought my book is, you know, pretty out there. Well, apparently it's not so out there these days as it might have been once. So that's really heartening.
Well, she just corrected me. She said, "No, Todd." I said, "I buy it for people that are just wakening up."
Oh,
Awakening. I have bought
oh,
several. So
well,
there you go. Mary Rodwell, thank you again. You are such a such an inspiration for so many people, and thank you for everything you do. And I look forward to seeing you again. Stay put where you're at, and we'll just keep on going. But yeah, it's great seeing you. Thanks for the update, and I love you, and best to you and yours.
love you too, Todd. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and we'll talk again before long. I'll look
Okay.
forward to it.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Thank you so much. All right.